all of us, if we think about how we felt in the last 5 months after this event, it's been very confusing whether you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim. And it'd be very interesting to get some insights from a very learned scholar on what all of this means. Is it a clash of ignorance, as Edward Said has described it, or is it a clash of civilization more dangerously, as described by Sam Huntington in his famous book? I'm sure all of you have come to hear him rather than me. Without sort of further ado, I'd just like to give you a brief background on Dr. Murad Hoffman, and then I'll let him start. Dr. Murad Hoffman finished his studies with a PhD in jurisprudence from the University of Munich Law School. He is at present a member of the board of directors of the Ibn Rushd Islamic University of Andalusia in Cordova, Spain, corresponding member of the Academy of Islamic Civilization Research in Amman, Jordan, an honorable member and advisor to the Central Council of Muslims in Germany. He is the author of publications such as Religion on the Rise, Islam, The Alternative, and Journey to Mecca, and many of these books are available at the back if anybody's interested today. He was the Director of NATO and Defense Affairs Foreign Office at Bonn, Director of Information NATO Brussels, and German Ambassador to Algeria and Morocco. He is decorated with the Federal Cross of Merit Germany, Commander of the Order of Merit Italy, Order of Merit in the Arts and Sciences, First Class, Egypt, and Grand Cordon, Morocco. As you can see, our brother is very well qualified and with a lot of experience, and I'm sure we'll all benefit. And I'd all encourage you to sort of make notes of any points that are of interest and to ask questions. And I think with somebody like him, it's very important that, like being a German and a Muslim, people like him can play a very valuable part in creating more understanding and dialogue between the West and the Islamic world. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear ladies, dear gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I am indeed very honored to be in this prestigious club in such an attractive country, small as it is, as Bahrain. But I'm saddened that the topic we are dealing with today is everything else but making us optimistic. During my life as a Muslim, I've made the constant experience that when Muslims get together, and if it's only two, all they talk about is Islam. I haven't heard this happening between Buddhists or Hindus, Jews or Christians. It's almost obsessive. But since 11 September, I have the impression all Muslims talk about is 11 September. Now, I did talk a lot about the 11th of September in Beit al-Quran a few days ago. And of course, there's only a limited number of truisms and insights that one can deliver on one and the same subject. So, please, that those who have been at the Beit al-Quran forgive me if some of what I say sounds familiar. At any rate, the text I have in front of me is in German, so there is no risk that I will read to you something. I think every one of you will recall where he was when the news of what happened in New York first and then in Washington came to him. I happened to be in Istanbul at the time. And when I heard about the first incident on the radio, I thought it was bound to happen sooner or later that a plane would run in these towers. They are much too tall. when the second plane hit, it was clearly a case of a concerted attack. Now, my immediately next reaction was, that looks to me very much like a Japanese kamikaze terrorist attack by one of those Japanese who want to revenge the killing of 274,000 Japanese in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But soon a link was established to Muslims. And at that moment, I prayed to Allah Ta'ala, Allah, please protect your Muslims. Because I knew that from that moment on, Islam as such would be probably targeted, and that Muslims collectively would probably be made feel guilty. And that is, of course, I switched off the television when I received a phone call from Singapore, from a newspaper in Singapore, saying what my comment was on what had happened in New York. So I said to her, what is the link between me and what happened in New York? Is it that I'm a Muslim? Would you have called a Catholic in Germany to get his comments if the news had been one other atrocity committed in Northern Ireland? Then, of course, I recited to her what Muslims normally have said in their first defense. That is, that the Quran absolutely forbids murder, the killing of innocent people. In particular, the killing, in any event, of children, women, monks. And the Quran goes even beyond that by equalizing a murderer with somebody who has killed mankind. This is in the 5th Surah 32. And of course the Quran unconditionally forbids suicide on the basis that none of us created himself, and therefore none of us has the right to dispose of his life. But that was perhaps a bit naive to believe that this would do it. Because it is one thing to convince somebody that terrorism has no religion. It's one thing to say nobody could claim to have acted in the name of Islam in doing the atrocities that happened. It's another thing to wash one's hands as a Muslim clean of what another Muslim does. Because the Quran not only forbids us to kill somebody, the Quran also forbids us to kill the prestige of somebody else. In particular, the Quran forbids a Muslim to deny somebody else's being a Muslim, as long as this other person claims to be a Muslim. In other words, already during the 1st century of Islam, the question was raised whether a Muslim stops being a Muslim if he commits a heavy sin. And the large majority of Muslims, the Sunni Muslims, came to the conclusion that no, whether or not somebody is really a Muslim, only Allah Ta'ala knows. It's not up to us to decide. And therefore, even if a Muslim publicly commits an atrocious sin, we other Muslims are not entitled to excommunicate him. I did not see the attack originally in any religious context, I admit, because I had never heard of an organization called Al-Qaeda.